everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zach. Here we talk about overlanding, gear, builds, DIY, all sorts of stuff related to just modifying your vehicle or getting out there and adventuring in the outdoors. Got a couple of quick announcements and then we'll jump into the video for today. Wanted to give a quick little shout out to Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight's been a huge sponsor of my channel and I've been a long time customer of Harbor Freight. They continue to sponsor tools and jacks and jack stands and all kinds of stuff that help me to do a lot of the DIY that I do. I reached out to Harbor Freight a while back to be a channel sponsor because I like to do a lot of stuff myself, primarily for the pride in being able to do it myself, but also because I'm just really interested, and being an engineer, I have a pretty curious mind and I like to learn how a lot of this stuff works. That being said, you typically need tools to do a lot of this work, and I've found myself buying tools from Harbor Freight in the past. It's a great bang for your buck. It's maybe not the highest quality on the market, but the problem is a lot of people spend way too much money on their tools when they could be spending them on mods, am I right? And so I think that Harbor Freight makes a lot of great products that are a good bang for their buck and great for the average garage DIYer like myself. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to Harbor Freight and also mention that their Hercules line, it's their drill line that I use pretty much across my shop. I use their reciprocating saw, circular saw, all of their drills, their impact drivers, everything I'm running is Hercules, and it's been awesome to use their tools. So far, haven't had any issues, but I'll continue to let you all know my thoughts on them or let you know if something breaks on them in the future. So, and if you're interested in getting a brushless drill for yourself, they've got a bunch of brushless new drills coming to the market, and I've loved mine so far. So with that out of the way, I want to talk about today's video, and that is going to be installing an oil catch can or oil separator. So the catch can we're going to be installing today is the J&L oil separator. I really appreciate them for sending this product out to me. We're going to do an install video of this, and then I'm going to talk about what this oil separator is doing functionally towards the end of the video, because not only is it important, I think, to understand what modification we're doing, but to understand why it's beneficial and whether it's really worth the money to do the modification in the first place. Thank you all for the support. Just as kind of a little update on the Instagram side, since maybe not all of you follow me on Instagram, my account is kind of quickly reaching 10,000 followers, which is pretty exciting. It's kind of a nice milestone, and I'm really thrilled and proud of some of the work that I post over there. So if you're really into photos or you're into kind of the short form content like Instagram Reels, I think I put out some kind of cool content over there. So if you feel like you don't get enough of my content on YouTube, maybe Instagram is another area you can see some stuff. And speaking of kind of exciting milestones, we're not quite there yet, but we're approaching the 20,000 subscriber mark. And we'll have to do something fun or special at the 20,000 subscriber mark. So if you got any ideas for that, feel free to leave them down below. Another thing I wanted to mention is I actually just launched another patch. I ordered a bunch of them. They are going to be here in early March. And if you're interested in pre-ordering one of those, I have it already listed up on my website. Just know that there'll be a delay in the shipping delivery because it's a pre-order. But if that's something you're interested in and you want to support me or support the channel, go check that out. I will have it linked down below, as well as linking the separator down below. So thank you all so much for the support. Like I said, let's jump into the unboxing and install, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what this does functionally. So let's jump right in. All right, so before we install this kit, I just want to show you what we're working with here. So this is the J&L oil separator kit in the box. It's pretty simple. Comes with this little bracket to mount up the oil separator, and then this is our little oil separator here. I think I opted for the slightly larger container, but I'll put that on the screen. So you can see in there, we've got the little filter. And then this is what we just need to empty every so often. So that goes on there. And then we've got these two hoses. One is noticeably longer than the other, as you can see. So all we got to do is swap out these two hoses, mount up this little bracket on a spot near the engine, and hook this thing up to it, and we'll be good to go. So let's jump out to the rig. Let's toss this on. So when I watched the original video, I didn't actually have any myself, but I just ran out to the auto store, auto parts store, whatever you want to call it, grabbed a little bit of wheel bearing grease. The guy in the video mentions that wheel bearing grease is kind of the best thing to use here to get this hose to actually slide over the nipples that it needs to. So grab this wheel bearing grease, and then now we'll just, you know, use our finger or zip tie or something to put this on the hoses so we can, you know, put them over where they need to go. So just wanted to show you this. It's not necessarily required. I think you could even use like dish soap or something. I don't know. He mentioned some different options, but I'm going to go with something that likely your vehicle is used to seeing. So this is what I'm going to use. All right, so we're going to start by lifting up this cover here. Just pops off, pulls out. It's pretty simple. So the little bracket is going to go right here, as far as I understand. And we got to crawl back in here, which is going to be a total blast with my air compressor in the way. So hopefully we can figure out a good angle here to film. Let's try this. All right, so I'm gonna way overexpose this video so it's easy to tell, but one of our hoses is gonna connect here and then it's gonna connect back there. So if we kind of look past this, you can see that clip goes there and then the hose is right there, continues down through. See if we look, there is the hose. It runs through there and connects to this little black, I don't know. It was easy to spot based on kind of this whole thing, but we're gonna use that little metal clip to pull that off. And likewise, we've got a little hose in the back there that we're gonna pop off there. So let's get to it. All right, so the back one has a clip. Reach back in here. Pull the clip off first, and then all right, that's not trivial. It takes a little bit of squeezing to kind of pop that off, so don't feel too bashful if you kind of have to pull. It's on a metal nipple, so it can take a little bit of force to pull on it. It's so tight in here. Now we're doing this one up front here. Go. All right, we got it. All right, so here is our hose. So this was the little clip in the back. This is the clip in the front. And then, come on. All right, so I'm gonna pull off this clip here, save it for the back, and then pull off this clip here, use it for the front. And we'll put the new stuff in. So now that I've got that hose popped off, I just want to show you, there is the little metal nipple on the inside there. And then right here is the other one. You can see that there. It's a little bit harder to see, but it's right there. Okay, so those are the two spots. The longer hose connects to that in the rear. The shorter hose connects to that one. And the right angle portion is what connects to them. Now these two clips, as you saw probably in the last little scene there, this is the clip on the back side. So I installed that on the longer hose. And then this is the shorter hose and I put the front clip on. I guess the rear nipple is slightly smaller, so this black clip is slightly smaller than this hose here, which is for the bigger nipple in the front. So these are the two hoses. We're going to hook them up and route them. I guess this front hose here on the larger kind of plastic spot right there requires a little bit of extra help. So we're going to put some grease on the inside of this hose. So let's try and do that now. All right, so I'm just gonna copy how they do it in the video. Route this hose. I wonder if it can actually route this way. Because of my ARB compressor, this is a little bit more challenging to install than in the video, but it's not too bad. All right. So I started from the right angle side and just pushed that through. It's hard for me to wrap this. All right, so as you can see, I've got that hose routed right up through there, all next to the engine. See the hose back in there, right down there, and then in the back, just like that. And look at the clip and the hose. Looks like we are right up next to the end there, and the clip is over the nipple, so I am happy with how that looks. The clip is a little bit difficult to squeeze, but if you just do like how I did it, is I would squeeze with these two fingers, and then I use my finger on the back side. So you squeeze and then you push. So that's how I did it. Seemed to work okay. Now let's do this front one here. And we're gonna have to put a little bit of grease right in the inside of this right angle fitting. All right, so I tried to put a little bit on the inside, nothing too crazy, because we don't want to get this inside of that area if I can help it. Maybe it's compatible and it's not a problem, but I'm trying to not do that, period. Now, time to route this hose the correct way, or at least the way that they recommend. All right, so you can see here, I routed this one on the outside so that the hose can lay on the inside. And then these will come right through here. So I've got them routed. Time to put that on that spot there. So let's do that. All right, now that we got that all good to go, we're gonna pull off this little spot here. This is a 10. Pop that out. Be sure to not touch your socket wrench to your positive terminal. Not gonna have a good time. And we get to install the bracket, just like this. Gosh, so sad. Oh boy. Okay, screw has been recovered off of the skid plate. Do not do that if you can help it. All right, so now all we're gonna do here is put a teeny bit of lube in each of these, or in my case, wheel bearing grease. Whatever you wanna lube these hoses with. Put a little bit of that on each of the hoses. So the shorter one is gonna go on the right side, and the longer hose is gonna go on the left side. The longer hose is connected to the PCV valve in the very back. Those should be good to go. So in the video, the guy connects the separator first and then the hoses, but since I was having such a hard time getting these connected, I'm gonna connect the hoses first, just to have a little more leverage. There. All right, so we got the hoses. Now we'll put the screws in. So I'm just gonna let that dangle there. Another thing to not drop is these two screws. Hopefully I can be effective at not dropping them. All right. Just gonna start these. There we go. All right, so that should be the bulk of it. So the one thing that I was working on for a long time off camera is this plug back here. I'll try and throw a screenshot up. This plug back here, I could not get to go on very well. So that's called the intake hose. And it's really hard to film, but essentially I was only able to get about 80% of the hose onto the line. And I think that's okay. All right, so the two hoses in the rear of the vehicle have been placed. Their clips are in the place they need to be. We've got the J and L separator attached here. I have tightened the screws. Not super tight, but pretty tight. Let's just double check, make sure that they are good and snug. There we go. Then let's check our can here. Got the space to unscrew it here. Let's make sure this is tightened nice and tight. There we go. All right, now the nice thing is when you go to tighten this bolt, it's going to naturally move this bracket kind of away from your battery, so that's nice. This metal bracket is kind of like will swing towards my battery terminal, so I like how that is. All of our hoses are routed appropriately, so I think we should be good. Now if we take my engine cover here, line it up with the 2 hooks in the back, let's see how this will look with the engine cover reinstalled. There we go. So that's hidden nicely right under the engine cover, and the engine cover actually will act as another little block against that. So that should work quite nice. Fortunately, my light here is flickering a bit. Hopefully it's not too distracting, but basically now, as you can see, here's the cover, and then we just pop this off to get at the oil separator. So that should be all good to go, and the install job is done. But there we go, should be all good to go. The big thing is to just check your separator every now and then, because it's important to make sure this doesn't fill up with too much fluid. So I got the oil catch can installed, and you may be wondering, okay, Zach, you installed this oil catch can. What does it do? Why do I care? Why should I even consider doing this modification? And that is what we're gonna jump into. So the catch can has been installed for roughly 500 miles now, and I'm going to take out the can and show you all what is inside of the can. All right, so I just started to unscrew this. Let's see how it looks so far. So apparently, kind of just depends on your engine, but a lot of times you'll have to basically drain this every 1,000 to 2,000 miles. It really just kind of depends. There we go. Can you see that? Looks like a nice cup of espresso. I'm gonna pour this on a plate maybe, just to kind of show what's going on here. So what I want to do is I want to just pour out the oil that is in this catch can, just to look at some of the particles that might be on the inside. Again, this is only after 500 miles, but I want to see if I can show you all anything interesting going on here. So if you can see inside, there's also like this whitish material. It's kind of hard to maybe show, and this could maybe be due to temperature or like the mixing of whatever's going on in here, but I'm not seeing too many metal shards, which is awesome. So my engine has 165,000 miles on it. It may or may not have the same color fluid as like some of the others, but this is just kind of interesting. So there also maybe are very small metal shavings in this that are making it a little more, you know, reflective, but not necessarily like chunks the size of something you would see. But yeah, that's what the fluid has looked like so far. There are companies that you can send this fluid to, and they can do like a full breakdown of the fluid. It's my understanding that they can test all the metals and all the fluids and figure out if you have certain leaks through certain seals, or if, you know, a specific part is breaking down and we know that that's made out of copper or aluminum or steel or something, and then they can say, hey, just so you know, we saw this in the fluid. That might mean that X part is breaking down and may go bad in the future, or something like that. So if you really like to dig into the science of your motor, you could get this fluid tested for not too expensive of a price, just to do any preventative maintenance at any time. Make sure that your engine is running nice and good. So this might be kind of a silly thing to include, but just so you know, once you pour everything out, make sure to thoroughly clean the inside nicely. So what I've done is I have used this just O'Reilly Auto Parts, nothing fancy. Non-chlorinated is the important part, brake cleaner. Sidco, those guys, they all recommend only using non-chlorinated brake cleaner. It's way better. And so use the non-chlorinated brake cleaner, super cheap. It's like $3 or $5 or something a can. And then you just clean this out, and I'll probably set it upside down or just tilt it up here and let it you know, basically evaporate / dry out overnight, but you could just wipe it out with a towel as well. So before you put it back, make sure that you just clean it out nice and good, and then yeah, we can reinstall it and you're good to go. So let's get back a little bit to why we installed this in the first place. So if you remember, in the way back, we have the PCV valve, and the PCV valve system comes up, goes through our filter, and then goes back into the intake. And so I just want to kind of break down a little bit more about what this does and what that means. So what we're doing is we're filtering that gas, oil, metal, whatever it is, mixture coming out of the crankcase, and the PCV valve system is the positive crankcase ventilation system. Now, if you're a normal person and you're not studying normal automotive terminology, or you don't necessarily know the ins and outs of how an engine works, which for the most part is pretty typical and average of most people, because there's paid professionals to be able to handle this. If it's something that you're wanting to learn a little bit more about, I'm just going to kind of break down some of these things as I was researching them in a way that maybe is helpful for you to understand, or at least provides another area where you can then go do some research. So like I said, the fluid, you know, air and whatever mixture coming out of your crankcase comes through that hose, that PCV valve hose. So what there is there's this little valve inside of that system, and it's called the positive crankcase ventilation system. So what it does is all of the pressure in your crankcase needs to be regulated, and there's a little valve designed to regulate that pressure so that over time a ton of pressure doesn't build up inside of your crankcase and then force different oil or air or whatnot through different seals on the engine. This can be a big problem, cause a lot of seal failure, or you'll see leaks, things of this nature. And so what we just want to do is make sure that if there's any sort of air and gas mixture getting past your pistons, if there's any oil mixing in with those blow-by vapors, if any of that stuff, or there's metal grinding that's slowly breaking down, and that's coming out of that PCV valve line, we don't want that to go directly back into your intake manifold and then run right through your engine again. So to back up a little bit, I want to also talk about something else. So in 4Runners, from most of the research that I've done, what we have is what's called a port injection system. And then there's other more modern cars that have direct injection systems. Now, I don't necessarily know like the performance trade-offs here. I haven't done all the research in the world to just break down engine design for you. But what I'm trying to look into is just how to compare these two systems. And apparently a lot of 4Runners are kind of complained about because they have this ancient technology called port injectors. What a port injector does is when you look at how your engine is designed, you have your piston, then you have your crankcase below your piston, and then up above your crankcase you have fuel and oxygen coming into this space above your piston. You have a spark plug to start the combustion above the piston, and then you have a exhaust line where eventually that goes out to your exhaust system. So what port injection does is it injects the fluid with the air before it gets into this cavity where the combustion occurs. And so there's these valves that open and close that allow for the air and your fuel to flow into that cavity. What direct injection does is it injects fluid directly into that cavity. Air comes in through your intake valve, and then those two things mix in the cavity. The spark plug ignites it, and then everything is, pushed out through the exhaust as that chemical reaction occurs. And then as that chemical reaction occurs, it creates energy, which pushes that piston. So what we call blow-by is basically everything that makes its way around a piston. In a new engine, that may be more metal particles as things break down, harden, expand, grind together, whatever it may be. The seals around your pistons also will maybe slowly over time degrade a little bit, so stuff gets by that piston as that chemical reaction occurs inside of your engine. So another thing that really is talked about is, okay, well, if you have a port injected system, the fluid is coming in before your intake valves, and this fluid cleans those valves nicely. It cleans your intake pretty nicely as well. And so you typically don't have some of these issues. And so it's like, well, why do I need to necessarily use a catch can? Because I don't typically have to do valve servicing because that gas keeps a lot of that really nice and clean. And while this is true, as we've seen in the catch can already, there's still a lot of other things that come through the PCV valve system that we just want to keep out of there, because ultimately what it's doing is it's keeping that positive pressure low so that we don't have issues with some of the seals inside of the crankcase. But what our catch can here is doing is it's making sure that oil and metal and other junk that we're filtering out through the catch can isn't just directly being put back into the air intake and pulling that right back into the system. So, and I don't exactly fully understand this, but I believe that your engine is designed to have clean air and fuel mixed together for that combustion. And this is the reason that if you have water come in through your air, that's a really bad thing. You're not going to be able to have good combustion that way. If you have dust and other things coming in through your air, that's not going to be good as well. And I would, even if you had no metal particles, but you just had oil vapors coming in with that air, I think this changes the chemical reaction entirely. And so having those oil vapors, the cold air or normal air, and then your fuel all coming into that cavity for combustion, it's just not how the engine was designed, and it will probably over time lead to just not designed operation of the engine. And so I think adding something like this is a really nice touch, because while Forerunners are already very reliable and could be partially to blame for still using that port injection system, while the system is great already, I think this is an area where it could still be improved. So, I think there's a lot of debate. People with direct injection systems, like I was talking about, really love these catch cans. They, I think, do even more for the engine. Even with a Forerunner or a port injected system like this, I still think there's value to be had by removing a lot of those oil vapors that you're seeing that we're catching in that catch can after me just driving for 400 to 500 miles with the vehicle. So hopefully that was sort of helpful throughout that process. I hope the little drawings I've popped up on the screen were kind of helpful to explain that. But yeah, I was interested in doing this modification. I hope that me kind of breaking down all the research that I did to understand this modification was helpful. And I hope that, maybe you see some of the value added in doing a modification like this. At the price point, if it's going to extend the life of your vehicle X thousands of miles, it's really a low cost. If you think about it being, $100-ish and a synthetic oil change costing around $100-ish, it's the cost of one oil change, and it'll maybe help you to keep driving the vehicle for however many years longer. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the support from all of you. If you've got any questions for me, you think I explained something or talked through how I researched it incorrectly in the video, or you've got some sort of question for me, feel free to drop those down below. I by no means am a trained or professional mechanic. I just like to dive into sort of the nerdy side of all of this and share my thoughts and what I learn. And some of you out there are probably more knowledgeable on this than me even. So if you have something to add to this conversation, or you want to correct me on something, please feel free to comment that down below. I always appreciate, respectful critiques. It helps me to be a better person and understand the topics better myself. So thank you so much for watching. As always, I appreciate the support, and I will catch you all in the next video.